Hey friends, welcome. If you're just coming out of the ad, welcome. Today I'm going to be continuing with Frankenstein, getting started on chapter 20. Recap what has come up to this point. Frankenstein has created the monster, the creature. Victor then got scared of the creature and ran away from it, and it took off by its own. And it apparently took on its own life. It got very familiar with the activities of some villagers, watching them from hiding place, grew to really almost love them until he finally decided to get up the guts and introduce himself, and they were so scared that they ran him off. And at that point he decided humanity would never accept him, and so therefore humanity must suffer. And the first one who must suffer, of course, was his creator, who left him in this condition. He explains the entire story to Victor in a hut on a high mountain, and explains that what he wants is a partner. He wants a creation made for him so that he does not spend his time alone. Someone who is as hideous, as he puts it, as abhorrent as he is, because only then will they know and be able to share in his pain. And he promises if that's the case, then he will disappear forever with this partner and with this companion, and never be seen again. If he doesn't, he will make Victor suffer for the rest of his life. Victor has decided that, yes, he will do this, because as his creator, he reluctantly agrees that he does owe him that. So what we have now is Victor trying to find a place where he can do this work to create another creature, a female creature for the first one. But he's very reluctant. He doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to unleash this into the world. He already feels badly about what he's already done, and now he's got something else to do. So that's where we stand with the story. Just some housekeeping. I am trying to get back to streaming 3 days a week. I had to take a month off. I had shoulder surgery. Still got the Band-Aids. Gotta see him there. Started therapy yesterday, so movement is already much better. I'm back to it. I had to take about a month off because it was just a little tough. So back to it. Monday I'll be streaming a game. Don't know which yet. There is a possibility that it will be Civilization 7. I do that. Have been streaming Satisfactory and enjoying the heck out of that. Have not done any flying in Flight Simulator for quite some time because I still have trouble. It's still painful reaching for the joystick there. So that's kind of been on hold. Another piece of housekeeping. I just added something today, which is for you guys to give me feedback. On my Discord channel, you can go into the channel stream suggestions, and you can drop suggestions there. Or for 100 channel points, 100 Kahuna crowns, you can drop it right here in chat. It'll automatically put it into the Discord, but you'll see it here as well. And I will be keeping a running list of that. And once we get a few suggestions, I'll even keep the list on screen so you can see what the latest suggestions are. So that's how that's going to work. All right. with that housekeeping done, I'm going to take a quick sip of drink here. Wet the whistle a little bit. I'm going to turn down the music just a little bit. There we go. And we will continue with Chapter 20 of Frankenstein. I sat one evening in my laboratory. The sun had set and the moon was just rising from the sea. I had not sufficient light for my employment, and I remained idle. In a pause of consideration of whether I should leave my labor for the night, or hasten its conclusion by an unremitting attention to it. As I sat, a train of reflection occurred to me, which led me to consider the effects of what I was now doing. Hang on one sec here for me. I'm going to change something up here real quick. Well, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. Like, not at all. Oh, I know why. I gotta do this. Well, that's not it. Oh, wrong one. There we go. One moment, please. Okay. So, as I said, a train of reflection occurred to me, which led me to consider the effects of what I was now doing. 3 years before, I was to consider the effects. I was engaged in the same manner and had created a fiend whose unparalleled barbarity had desolated my heart and filled it forever with the bitterest remorse. I was now about to form another being of whose dispositions I was alike ignorant. She might become 10,000 times more malignant than her mate and delight for its own sake in murder and wretchedness. He had sworn to quit the neighborhood of man and wretchedness and hide himself in deserts, but she had not. And she, who in all probability was to become a thinking and reasoning animal, might refuse to comply with the compact made before her creation. They might even hate each other. The creature who already lived loathed his own deformity, and he might not conceive a greater abhorrence for it than it came before his eyes in the female form. She also might turn with disgust from him into the superior beauty of man. She might quit him. He be again alone, exasperated by the fresh provocation, being deserted by one of his own species. Even if they were to leave Europe and inhabit the deserts of the New World, yet one of the first results of those sympathies for which the demon thirsted would be children, and a race of devils would be propagated upon the earth, who might make the very existence of the species of man a condition precarious and full of terror. Had I right, for my own benefit, to inflict this curse upon everlasting generations? I had before been moved by the sophisms of the being I had created. I had been struck senseless by his fiendish threats. But now, for the first time, the wickedness of my promise burst upon me. I shuddered to think that future ages might curse me as their pest, whose selfishness had not hesitated to buy its own peace at the price perhaps of the existence of the whole human race. Lucy, welcome. I trembled, and my heart failed within me. And on looking up, I saw by the light of the moon the demon at the casement. A ghastly grin wrinkled his lips as he gazed on me, where I sat fulfilling the task which he had allotted to me. Yes, he had followed me in my travels. He had loitered in forests, hid himself in caves, or taken refuge in wide and desert heaths. And he now came to mark my progress and claim the fulfillment of my promise. As I looked on him, his countenance expressed the utmost extent of malice and treachery. I thought with a sensation of madness on my promise of creating another like to him, and trembling with passion, tore to pieces the thing on which I was engaged. The wretch saw me destroy the creature on whose future existence he depended for happiness, and with a howl of devilish despair and revenge, withdrew. I left the room, and locking the door, made a solemn vow in my own heart never to resume my labors. Then, with trembling steps, I sought my own apartment. I was alone. None were near me to dissipate the gloom and relieve me from the sickening oppression of the most terrible reveries. Several hours passed, and I remained near my window, gazing on the sea. It was almost motionless, for the winds were hushed, and nature reposed under the eye of the quiet moon. A few fishing vessels alone specked the water. Now and then, the gentle breeze wafted the sound of voices as the fishermen called to one another. I felt the silence, although I was hardly conscious of its extreme profundity, until my ear was suddenly arrested by the paddling of oars near the shore, and a person landed close to my house. In a few minutes after, I heard the creaking of my door, as if someone endeavored to open it softly. It trembled from head to foot. I felt a presentiment of who it was, and wished to rouse one of the peasants who dwelt in a cottage not far from mine, but I was overcome by the sensation of helplessness, so often felt in frightful dreams, when you in vain endeavour to fly from an impending danger, and was rooted to the spot. Presently, I heard the sound of footsteps along the passage. The door opened, and the wretch whom I dreaded appeared. Shutting the door, he approached me and said in a smothered voice, "You have destroyed the work which you began. What is it that you intend? Do you dare to break your promise? I have endured toil and misery. I left Switzerland with you. I crept along the shores of the Rhine, among its willow islands and over the summits of its hills. I dwelt many months in the heaths of England and among the deserts of Scotland. I have endured incalculable fatigue and cold and hunger. Do you dare destroy my hopes? Begone! I do break my promise. Never will I create another like yourself, equal in deformity and wickedness. Slave, I before reasoned with you, but you have proved yourself unworthy of my condescension. Remember that I have power. You believe yourself miserable, but I can make you so wretched that the light of day will be hateful to you. You are my creator, but I am your master. Obey." The hour of my irresolution is past, and the period of your power is arrived. Your threats cannot move me to do an act of wickedness, but they confirm me in a determination of not creating you a companion in vice. Shall I, in cold blood, set loose upon the earth a demon whose delight is in death and wretchedness? Begone! I am firm, and your words will only exasperate my rage. The monster saw my determination in my face and gnashed his teeth in the impotence of anger. "Shall each man," cried he, "find a wife for his bosom, and each beast have his mate, and I be alone? I had feelings of affection, and they were requited by detestation and scorn. Man, you may hate, but beware. Your hours will pass in dread and misery, and soon the bolt will fall which must ravish from you your happiness forever. Are you to be happy while I grovel in the intensity of my wretchedness? You can blast my other passions, but revenge remains. Revenge henceforth dearer than light or food. I may die. First you, my tyrant and tormentor, shall curse the sun that gazes on your misery. Beware, for I am fearless, and therefore powerful. I will watch with the willness of a snake, and I may sting with its venom. Man, you shall repent of the injuries you inflict." "Teufel, cease, and do not poison the air with the sounds of malice. I have declared my resolution to you, and I am no coward to bend beneath words. Leave me. I am inexorable." "It is well. I go. But remember, I shall be with you on your wedding night." I started forward and exclaimed, "Villain! Before you sign my death warrant, be sure that you are yourself safe." I would have seized him, but he eluded me and quitted the house with precipitation. In a few moments I saw him in his boat, which shot across the waters with an arrowy swiftness and was soon lost amidst the waves. All again was silent, but his words rang in my ears. I burned with rage to pursue the murderer of my peace and precipitate him into the ocean. I walked up and down my room hastily and perturbed, while my imagination conjured up 1,000 images to torment and sting me. Had I not followed him and closed with him in mortal strife? But I had suffered him to depart, and he had directed his course towards the mainland. I shuddered to think who might be the next victim sacrificed to insatiate revenge, and then I thought again of his words. "I will be with you on your wedding night." That, then, was the period fixed for the fulfillment of my destiny. In that hour I should die, and at once satisfy and extinguish his malice. The prospect did not move me to fear, yet when I thought of my beloved Elizabeth, of her tears and endless sorrow when she should find her lover so barbarously snatched from her, tears, the first I had shed for many months, streamed from my eyes, and I resolved not to fail, all before my enemy, with the bitter struggle. The night passed away, and the sun rose from the ocean. My feelings became calmer, if it may be called calmness when the violence of rage sinks into the depths of despair. I left the house, the horrid scene of last night's contention, and walked on the beach of the sea, which I almost regarded as an insuperable barrier between me and my fellow creatures. Nay, a wish that such should prove the fact stole across me. I desired that I might pass my life on that barren rock, wearily. It is true, but interrupted by any sudden shock of misery. If I returned, it was to be sacrificed, or to see those whom I most loved died under the grasp of a demon whom I had myself created. I walked about the isle like a restless spectre, separated from all it loved and miserable in the separation. When it became noon and the sun rose higher, I lay down on the grass and was overpowered by a deep sleep. I had been awake the whole of the preceding night. My nerves were agitated, my eyes inflamed by watching and misery. The sleep into which I now sank refreshed me, and when I awoke, I felt again as if I belonged to a race of human beings like myself, and I began to reflect upon what had passed with greater composure. Yet still the words of the fiend rang in my ears like a death knell. They appeared like a dream, yet distinct and oppressive as a reality. The sun had far descended. I still sat on the shore, satisfying my appetite, which had become ravenous with an oaten cake. Then I saw a fishing boat land close to me, and one of the men brought me a packet. It contained letters from Shanifa, and one from Clerful, entreating me to join him. He said he was wearing away his time fruitlessly where he was, said letters from the friends he had formed in London desired his return to complete the negotiation they had entered into for his Indian enterprise. He could not any longer delay his departure. But as his journey to London might be followed, even sooner than now, he conjectured, by his longer voyage, he entreated me to bestow as much of my society on him as I could spare. He besought me, therefore, to leave my solitary isle and to meet him at Perth, so that we might proceed southwest together. This letter, in a degree, recalled me to life, and I determined to quit my island at the expiration of 2 days. Yet, before I departed, there was a task to perform on which I shuddered to reflect. I must pack up my chemical instruments, and for that purpose I must enter the room which had been the scene of my odious work, and I must handle those utensils, the sight of which was sickening to me. The next morning at daybreak I summoned sufficient courage and unlocked the door of my laboratory. The remains of the half-finished creature whom I had destroyed lay scattered on the floor, and I almost felt as if I had mangled the living flesh of a human being. I paused to collect myself and then entered the chamber. With trembling hand I conveyed the instruments out of the room, but I reflected that I ought not to leave the relics of my work to excite the horror and suspicion of the peasants, and I accordingly put them into a basket with a great quantity of stones, and laying them up, determined to throw them into the sea that very evening. In the meantime, I sat upon the beach, employed in cleaning and arranging my chemical apparatus. Nothing could be more complete than the alteration that had taken in place in my feelings since the night of the appearance of the demon. I had before regarded my promise with gloomy despair as a thing that, with whatever consequences, must be fulfilled. But I now felt as if a film had been taken from before my eyes, and I, for the first time, saw clearly. The idea of renewing my labors did not for one instant occur to me. The threat I had heard weighed on my thoughts, but I did not reflect that a voluntary act of mine could avert it. I had resolved, in my own mind, that to create another like the fiend I had first made would be an act of the basest and most atrocious selfishness, and I banished from my mind every thought that could lead to a different conclusion. Between 2 and 3 in the morning, the moon rose, and I then, putting my basket aboard the little skiff, sailed out about 4 miles from the shore. The scene was perfectly clear and solitary. A few boats were returning towards land, but I sailed from them. I felt as if I was about the commission of a dreadful crime and avoiding with shuddering anxiety any encounter with my fellow creatures. At one time the moon, which had before been clear, had suddenly overspread a cloud, and I took advantage of the moment of darkness and cast my blank basket into the sea. I listened to the gurgling sound as it sank, and then sailed away from the spot. The sky became clouded, but the air was pure, although chilled by the northeast breeze that was then rising. But it refreshed me and filled me with such agreeable sensations that I resolved to prolong my stay on the water, and fixing the rudder in a direct position, stretched myself at the bottom of the boat. Clouds hid the moon, everything was obscure, and I heard only the sound of the boat as its keel cut through the waves. The murmur lulled me, and in a short time I slept soundly. I do not know how long I remained in this situation, but when I awoke, I found that the sun had already mounted considerably. The wind was high, and the waves continually threatened the safety of my little skiff. I found that the wind was northeast. It must have driven me far from the coast from which I had embarked. I endeavored to change my course, but quickly found that if I again made the attempt, the boat would instantly be filled with water. Thus situated, my only resource was to drive before the wind. I confess that I felt a few sensations of terror. I had no compass with me, and so slenderly acquainted with the geography of this part of the world that the sun was of little benefit to me. I might be driven into the wide Atlantic and feel all the tortures of starvation, or be swallowed up in the immeasurable waters that roared and buffeted about me. I had already been out many hours and felt the torment of a burning thirst, a prelude to my other sufferings. I looked on the heavens, which were covered by clouds that flew above the wind, only to be replaced by others. I looked upon the sea. It was to be my grave. "Fiend!" I exclaimed. "Your task is already fulfilled." I thought of Elizabeth, of my father, and of Clerval, all left behind, on whom this monster might satisfy his sanguinary and merciless passions. This idea plunged me into a reverie so despairing and frightful that even now, when the scene is on the point of closing before me forever, I shudder to reflect on it. Some hours passed thus, but by degrees, as the sun declined towards the horizon, the wind died away into a gentle breeze, and the sea became free from breakers. But these gave place to a heavy swell. I felt sick and hardly able to hold the rudder, when suddenly I saw a line of high land towards the south. Almost spent as I was, by fatigue and the dreadful suspense I endured for several hours, this sudden certainty of life rushed like a flood of warm joy to my heart, and tears gushed from my eyes. How mutable are our feelings! How strange it is that clinging love we have of life even in excessive misery. I constructed another sail with a part of my dress and eagerly steered my course towards the land. It was a wild and rocky appearance, but as I approached nearer, I easily perceived the traces of cultivation. I saw vessels near the shore, and found myself suddenly transported back to the neighborhood of civilized man. I carefully traced the windings of the land and hailed the steeple, which I at length saw issuing from behind a small promontory. As I was in a state of extreme debility, I resolved to sail directly towards the Sound, as a place where I could most easily procure nourishment. Fortunately, I had money with me. As I turned to the promontory, I perceived a small, neat town and a good harbour, which I entered, my heart bounding with joy at my unexpected escape. "Hey, Bree, welcome home from work." As I was occupied in fixing the boat and arranging the sails, several people crowded towards the spot. They seemed much surprised at my appearance, but instead of offering me any assistance, whispered together with gestures that at any other time might have produced in me a slight sensation of alarm. As it was, I merely remarked that they spoke English, and I therefore addressed them in that language. "My good friends," said I, "will you be so kind as to tell me the name of this town and inform me where I am?"
"You will know that soon enough," replied a man with a hoarse voice. "Maybe you are come to a place that will not prove much to your taste. But you will not be consulted as to your quarters, I promise you."
I was exceedingly surprised on receiving so rude an answer from a stranger. I was also disconcerted on perceiving the frowning and angry countenances of his companions. "Why do you answer me so roughly?" I replied. "Surely it is not the custom of Englishmen to receive strangers so inhospitably."
"I do not know," said the man, "what the custom of the English may be, but it is the custom of the Irish to hate villains."
While this strange dialogue continued, I perceived the crowd rapidly increase. Their faces expressed a mixture of curiosity and anger, which annoyed and in some degree alarmed me. I inquired the way to the inn, but no one replied. I then moved forward, and a murmuring sound arose from the crowd as they followed and surrounded me. And an ill-looking man approached, tapping me on the shoulder, and said, "Come, sir. You must follow me to Mr. Kirwin's to give an account of yourself." "Who is Mr. Kirwin? Why am I to give an account of myself? Is this not a free country?" "Aye, sir. Free enough for honest folk. Mr. Kirwin is a magistrate, and you're to give an account of the death of a gentleman who was found murdered here last night." This answer startled me, but I presently recovered myself. I was innocent, so that could easily be proved. Accordingly, I followed my conductor in silence and was led to one of the best houses in town. I was ready to sink from fatigue and hunger, but being surrounded by a crowd, I thought it politic to rouse all my strength, so that no physical debility might be construed into apprehension or conscious guilt. Little did I then expect the calamity that was in a few moments to overwhelm me and extinguish in horror and despair all fear of ignominy or death. I must pause here, for it requires all my fortitude to recall the memory of the frightful events which I am about to relate in proper detail to my recollection. Things are not sounding good for Frank. Victor Frankenstein. He's confronted by the monster because he refuses to build the creature, to build the bride of Frankenstein. And the monster says he will rue that day for the rest of his life. It's going to make his life miserable. And now he shows up at a random village that the winds have blown into, and somebody has died. Murdered. He's getting blamed. All right, we'll take a little break here. How's everybody doing? Got to change this. How is everybody doing? Bree, how was work? I can turn the sound back on for a minute. Hey, Magica, welcome! I'm feeling better. Had to take a month off for my shoulder. It's still not great, but I started physical therapy. Here's the good part. Sitting like this, it doesn't hurt. I can type. I'm back to typing. I had my arm in a sling for a couple of weeks, where typing required me to lean forward, and what that ended up doing was hurting my back because I was leaning forward, all that. So, out of the sling, I still have limited range of motion. I can bring my hand up to probably about there before it starts really stretching and hurting. I can move from the elbow just fine. That's not a problem, but raising the shoulder is an issue. Going out to the outside, it's even worse. But we're working on that. I've started exercises to start loosening it up and getting the tendons stretched out to where I get, full range of motion back, or at least as close as I'm going to get. So how have you been? What has been happening in the world of Imagica? I asked the same question of Bree and of Losi. How are things in your world? I'd like to know. Also, I mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but for those, I'll be up to speed soon. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I actually healed pretty quick. The physical therapist was actually yesterday was my first session, and he was quite surprised how well I was able to move it already. So he said, let's keep this up. We'll have you back in no time. Sometimes some doctors will tell you it's a year to recover. Some will tell you 6 months. The assistant at my orthopedic surgeons said it probably 4 months. We'll see. I'll keep working on it. They basically told me yesterday, the more I exercise it, with no pain, the quicker it's going to be. So I am regularly doing things to, bring it up, and that's about as far as I can go before I start getting pain. Well, let's see. If I let it sit for a second, I feel a stretch right now. And then I go a little higher, feel a stretch. Yep. There's not a ton of pain there. If I move quickly, oh yeah, that hurts. But we'll get to that. But yeah, things are going well. Something I added Made it back now that your phone isn't fighting you. Well, welcome, Losi. How are things in your part of the world? Something I mentioned at the beginning of the stream is a new feature I've added. If you look down in your channel rewards, for 100 Kahuna crowns, make a suggestion. Why did I put any points on it? So it doesn't get spammed. Getting back into writing after a little bit of a hiatus. Excellent. Hope the hiatus was by choice, rather than necessity. Although sometimes necessity and choice are the same thing. Anyway, you can suggest things, whether it's streams you'd like to see. If it's a game, you can say what game you want me to play. If it's things you want me to read, you can suggest them there. Or features of the stream. You want a certain way to interact or whatever. Just drop 100 Kahuna crowns and drop it in there. It will automatically put it into a file for me that I can review. It'll also put it into the stream suggestions channel on my Discord. So, and by the way, if you're not a member of my Discord, the link is in the chat. Let's see. Life got very lifey is the short version. Yeah, I get that. Things are going pretty good, focusing on my post-apocalyptic world more these days. Yeah, that's kind of hitting a little close to home, isn't it? I mean, oof. Things are going around here. Gee, mini Christmas. Some of you know, others don't necessarily know, that I am, I have multiple, I don't want to say personas because they're all Kahuna the Elder. But I tend not to talk about current events as much on stream. Mainly because that's not what you guys are here for. I guess I could create a current events just chatting stream at some point. Maybe. I don't know. But if you follow me on Threads, and yep, it's Kahuna the Elder on Threads, that's where you get to see the more... the current event-y guy. And I'm a bit more harsh. A bit more, a little bit more of an edge there. But if you ever get curious about that stuff, you can follow me on Threads, Kahuna the Elder. I am no longer on X Twitter. Haven't been on really. I think I stopped posting there a year and a half ago, maybe a little more. Basically, I stopped posting there for sure when Musk took over. So posting anything there, to me, I'll never see it. I can't think the last time I actually looked. My account is locked. And the only reason I have it still there is so that nobody takes it. Although apparently, Rocket Man wants to take it, he will. Hey, Raiders coming in. Runed Rider, thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Void Raid, Void Raid. Welcome, everyone. How are you today? Welcome to a Kahuna Plays stream. Oh, thanks for the follow, Rylus Rogue. Welcome. We're just chatting a little bit in between chapters here. I am reading, getting towards the end of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. About to begin chapter 21 here in a few minutes. We've got an ad coming up in 17 minutes, so I might just chat up until the ad, and then we'll go into the read. Sad Koki, welcome. How is everybody doing? Is everybody having a good day? How was your stream? Runed Rider, how was the stream? And what were you streaming? And in fact, that's I'm glad to see you guys here. Welcome. So, yeah, so what I was just talking about is down in the Kahuna Crown, see the reward points. You can request things to put on stream. If you like to have like in-break games or that kind of stuff, let me know. Heads up, not a big issue, but I want to know in your shoes. I think my gain is maxing out. Lots of high gain pops. Thank you. Thank you. Let me drop that down. I moved the microphone for the read part. And that is probably what's causing the pops. And in fact, the other problem is I'm not looking at my meter. There we go. Yeah, I can see it there. Thank you so much for that. I'll there, that should be adjusted a little better now. You shouldn't get the game pops. Yeah. Thank you very much. Stream was chill, had a good time, kind of went live for funsies. You know what? No better reason. No better reason than just going live for the heck of it. I've done that a few times where usually when I do it, it's because Mrs. Kahuna is out of town and I'm up late doing whatever. And I figure, what the heck? I'll stream while I'm doing it. Why not? And if people show up, people show up. But Ruined Writer, thank you so much for pointing out the sound pops. I had scrolled my audio. No, I should probably fix that just in the window here. I had scrolled my audio mixer over too far over and I couldn't see my microphone input. So that's what was doing it for me. Okay. So, yeah, so for those of you who are unfamiliar, I am Kahuna the Elder. I do 3 streams a week right now. I had to take a month off because of shoulder surgery, but I'm back. Mondays are usually a gaming stream. Last couple streams have been satisfactory, which I enjoy immensely and will spend entirely too much time on. But I'll stream Microsoft Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've streamed Skyrim, No Man's Sky. I'm getting ready to purchase and start streaming Civilization 7. So, that's what I do on Monday. On Wednesdays, it's it's closest to a just chatting stream. Thanks for the follow. Made shit progress on chapter 1. Rough your threat, but that's fine. Something to help brainstorms is still world building show. That's excellent. You know what? Any progress is progress. Okay? If it's a step forward, it's a step forward. And that's what's important. You need to take all of your wins. Because even the small wins, when piled up, they get big. And they get big quick. So take that win. Yeah, so Wednesdays, I'll do writing sprints. I try to help people if they're stuck on something. I'm more than happy to toss in my 2 cents. Also, the folks who tend to be in that stream will also do the same thing. I try to keep a very friendly community. I try to keep it very positive, and have a good time. We're here for fun. Fridays is my Kahuna read stream. That's when I actually read. I like to read submitted works from my viewers. That's the ultimate goal. Ruined Writer, thank you so much. Go do what you got to do. Oh, glad you had a great stream. Thank you for popping in, and thank you so much for the raid. I will try to take very good care of your people. Your peeps are important. So go off. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. Yeah, so we try to keep a very, very positive, light stream. I do prefer to read the stuff that is submitted by viewers. I like giving voice to the characters that you guys create. And sometimes I do it cold, but I don't pre-read them. So it's, it can sometimes be a little funny when I try to interpret what a voice should be. How big of a section do you read at a time when you do submitted work? Is there a word limit or just a chapter at a time? Generally, I try to keep it to 3,000 words. I can read a chapter at a time, depending on the length of it. My basic rule of thumb is I can do about, in reading, somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 words per minute is what reading is for me. So 3,000 words is about a 30-minute read. It can be shorter, It can be longer, even up to 5,000 words. I'll read that. I really don't have a word limit. And if you are the only one who has submitted for that stream, hey, that's yours. I'll keep reading it. If perusing submitted works as part of your enjoyment, you might enjoy the mediocre old trash on my YouTube. I have my voiceover story of Tales of the Ambassador. You know what? Feel free, drop your YouTube link in. I am very link friendly here. You know, I don't like people spamming links, obviously, but no, please drop your link in. I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. You know, I think we all need to support each other when we do this kind of stuff. Yeah, so you can, if you want to submit the work, let me, that's the Discord link in my Discord channel. Go ahead and join up. And down in the channels, you'll find one that is called Showcase Requests. Showcase Requests is where you drop links to your work. And I go in there, I check Discord, and if there's something in there, I read it. To be honest, I prefer reading stuff that's submitted. Holy crap, there's a bunch of stuff in there I didn't see. Well, crap. I have read Tortoise Slice. Imagica, did I ever read yours? Rohan's Escape? I couldn't have, because you submitted it like 2 days ago. Awesome. Ruined Writer, I see it. I see the link in there. I'll be more than happy to take a look at it. First drafts are early chapters in my work in progress. Might submit time just get feel for the direction of things. Yeah, that's another reason why I like reading people's work. One, Ruined, thank you so much. I will check out and watch the stuff on your channel, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it. And thank you so much again for the raid. Thank you so much. One of the reasons I like to read stuff for people is they always tell you, as when you're editing, read it out loud. There's only one problem with that. You know what you wrote. Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Well, then I've got something to read. Got a couple of things to read actually there. So we'll drift off Frankenstein after the next ad, which is 9 minutes away. So you know what you wrote. So when you're reading it back, even out loud to yourself, a lot of times you may get that something sounds funny, but you're not going to catch bigger errors because you're going to glaze right over it. It's like one of those things. You ever seen it where they take the words and scramble the letters for each word in a paragraph and you can still read it? Same thing happens when you're reading your own work. That's why I share it, because even if I edit carefully, I still need other views. So I'm in reverse stance. I think it's better. I think it's this. It probably is better than you think it is. We are all our own worst critics, and we all listen to that little gremlin in our head that tells us we are not worthy. Don't listen to it, says the guy who listens to it. But yeah, so, you know, when I read it, I will come across the mistakes. I try to fix it in my head before it comes out of my mouth, but sometimes you'll catch it. Sometimes you'll catch when I read it, there's a weird phrasing, or I might phrase it in a way that you didn't think it would read. And so we catch those things. But I also think, especially with characters, until you hear them speak to you other than in here, you don't get a true feel for what your character comes across as. And I think it really helps to hear it voiced out in different voices so that you can really get a feel for how your character's coming across. I have so much trouble reading my work out aloud. I don't know why, but I always prefer someone else to do it. So thanks. You're absolutely welcome. Like I said, it's what I enjoy. I enjoy doing it. I get a kick out of it. So I'm more than happy to do it. And in fact, the magic, I'm going to start to load up yours. So link. It's up on the screen here. Paste and go. Boom. There he is. We change. Oop. The longest. Ernie, come on, Kahuna. You know how to. Wow. That really didn't work. Ernie. Come on. Spell it right. There we go. So we'll read that after the ad. Yeah, a lot of folks do have the trouble reading it out loud. And then one last thing I like to do at the end of a read is kind of give you my impressions as the reader. Okay. I am not the be all end all on these things. While I can edit, I don't claim to be the greatest editor. I don't claim to be the greatest proofreader. I will tell you what are the things that I stumble upon as a reader. So grammar, whatever, that's less important than the things where I read and go, oh, I didn't get this or I didn't get that. Now, sometimes it's because I'm reading something that's in the middle of the story and you'll just go, oh yeah, I explained that in the first chapter. Perfect. I will let you know what it is as at the end, as I've read it, what the general feel is to me. As a rule, I have very rarely read anything I didn't like. I can always find something good in the stuff people write. I may find things where I say, hey, my opinion is you could do this or you could do that. Take it with a grain of salt. If it speaks to you, awesome. If it doesn't, still awesome. Do what you got to do with it. Also, something we're double checking. Is there anything you're not comfortable with reading? My story is of religious fantasy that does touch on something that some people might not feel okay going over. I wouldn't want to cross any lines. So here's the thing. If it is something that that requires a trigger warning, all I ask is give me the trigger warning. Tell me what it is that might trigger somebody. I will still read it. I read an Edgar Allan Poe work, The Gold Bug, earlier this year. It was a trigger warning for that because it uses the N-word. Because at the time that he wrote it, it was written about an adventure in the Deep South. And one of the characters refers to himself with the N-word. I will read it. I will give that warning. That is not a word I use myself, ever. Ever. My best friend who passed away, SoCal Grumpy. Black guy. Never used that word in my life. Ever. Unless I'm reading it. Fair and valid. I'll definitely submit my prologue at the very least when I get home then. Excellent. Yeah, like I said, as long as there's a trigger warning so that people who might be affected by it can opt out. They can mute. I'll even put a trigger warning up on the screen if I need to. So, that way people can see before they even hear a thing. They can see trigger warning for, whatever it is. That's to me is the best way to do it. So I am not limiting. And I can go that direction. I also have to make sure that my stream has been tagged for more mature audiences. Not a big deal. I don't do it all the time. All right, where are we at? We are 2 minutes and 30 seconds away from the ad. I do apologize for ads. They are a necessary evil. I think I make a whole $1.50 out of ads each month. doesn't pay for my Twitch subscriptions. But I don't do this for the money. I'd like to. I don't do it for the money. I do it because I have fun doing it, which is probably the best reason. Affiliate doesn't let me tag for mature audience for so, which is frustrating. I'm not sure. I'm mature audiences. I mean, I'm affiliate, and it lets me. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I'll have to check. But yeah, I very rare. I mean, I've seen video games and language much stronger than I have ever read. So I don't worry about it much. And I figure most of the people who are watching me know where I'm at with stuff, and so for them it's a good thing. All right, let's see here.
1 minute to the ad. 1 minute.
Yeah. So if you guys have any suggestions, you can drop them straight up in the Discord, the stream suggestions channel, or drop a few Kahuna crowns and put them in there. So in that case, I should mention Rohan in the story begins as a slave. That's not what the story about. Okay. Well, beginning as a slave is okay. So for though I will issue that trigger warning when we come back from ad. Any other trigger warnings I need to know about? Let me I'm going to actually create a real quick while we're in the ad a trigger warning. We'll see it after on the other side of the ad if you are ad challenged. Ad next. Okay. Warning. Your warning, slavery. Select the font here. A good font for this. No. 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 Oh, wow, that's got really bad kerning. That's okay, though. Color, we're going to make that... Oh, no. Not a good color. A little brighter. And... outline. Oh. Oh, didn't select it. Okay, select color. Oh, no. Alignment left. And size. Fine. The arm. Okay. Okay. Now. I'm going to take this. Yeah, that font doesn't work. Something a little fatter. No, not that one. No. 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 Man, breaking out here. No. Property. Little small. Okay, there we go. All right, ad break is finishing up. So we'll be able to get started here in just a second. All right. We are back. All right, so we are going to start with Magica's The Longest Journey, Part 1. Rohan's Escape. The ground beneath Rohan's feet trembled and pulsed with the frenetic energy of the crowd. The stands of the horned arena, old and rickety, groaned under the weight of the frenzied spectators who bounced in unison, their cheers and roars creating a deafening, almost ritualistic cacophony. It was a grotesque celebration, a dark, rhythmic chant that reveled in the bloodshed, eagerly anticipating another death, another drop of pain, another dead man, another faceless corpse added to the grim tally of his victims. Adrenaline surged through his veins, making his ears ring with a high-pitched buzz. His heart raced, pounding furiously as if he were celebrating the hollow victory on its own, detached from its wearied spirit. Through his sweat-streaked vision, the blurred shapes of the destitute inhabitants of the pit melded into a chaotic, grim tableau of dirt and despair. Their voices rose in a rhythmic chant, repeating his name like a litany. Rohan! Rohan! In that fleeting moment, he felt a sense of importance, a fleeting grandeur. He was a victor, a lord of this grotesque arena. That brief surge of triumph was fleeting. The sensation was abruptly cut short by a harsh, jarring tug on the iron collar around his neck. The sudden pull stole his breath, forcing him to collapse to the ground to avoid choking. His muscles, sore and numb from the grueling fight, protested every movement. Even if he were not exhausted, he would not have risen willingly. It was his final act of resistance, making them exert effort, dragging him back to his cell with as much difficulty as possible, making them share in his suffering, even if just for a moment. He closed his eyes, letting the darkness engulf him. A wry smile tugged at his cracked lips as he thought, "This is my reward." The thought lingered with a bitter edge. "Let's see how you handle this, you bastard Joe. You managed it this time?" Dim light from the corridor cast long shadows on the walls of Rohan's cell as the door swung open with a harsh creak. The figure of Joe, small and wiry, filled the doorway, his presence a stark contrast to the dark and oppressive atmosphere within. Joe's sneer was almost as prominent as his swaggering bravado, his booted feet stamping with an air of contempt. "Damn! You can't even move your cursed legs," Joe spat, his voice dripping with disdain as he delivered a sharp kick to Rohan's side. The pain shot through Rohan's body, a stark reminder of his vulnerability. The little man's taunts and kicks were an all too familiar part of his grim routine, each one a symbol of the power imbalance that defined his existence in the arena. Rohan hated Joe with a passion that burned hotter than the arena's lights. Every word, every sneer from the little man was a thorn in his side, a reminder of his captivity and the degradation he endured daily. Joe's hands, rough and calloused from handling chains and whips, gripped Rohan with a brutal efficiency, shoving him further into the confines of his cell. As Rohan was forced into the dim interior, Joe leaned in close, his breath hot and rank against Rohan's face. "I see you're smiling, slave," Joe mocked, his eyes glinting with malicious satisfaction. "You are all so stupid. You think that just because they're shouting your name, you become someone? You're nothing. I tell you, believe me, there will come a time when someone will take your head and I'll enjoy it. By Uchtors, I'll enjoy it so much, maybe I'll even convince the boss to free the one who manages to do it." The venom in Joe's words was palpable, each sentence a twisted promise of future suffering. His voice was a shrill screech, filled with the sadistic pleasure he took in tormenting Rohan. As Joe spat in Rohan's face, the slave wiped the filth away, his eyes hardening with a mixture of rage and resignation. But Joe paid no attention to Rohan's anger. The last thing Rohan saw before his cell was once again swallowed by darkness was the smug, self-satisfied grin plastered across the halfling's face. He tried to lunge forward, his instinct to grab and crush the life out of him, but his body betrayed him. The iron chains around his wrists and neck felt like boulders weighing him down, and his limbs were too weak from exhaustion. His head slumped between his shoulders, movement slow and defeated. The stench of sweat and filth clung to his skin, an oppressive odor that never left him, making him dizzy and sick. The metallic taste of blood lingered in his mouth, mixing with the dry bitterness of despair. This is where he would die, locked away like an animal. No one would ever remember him. His name, once feared across seas, would fade like whispers on the wind. There was a time when he thought escape was possible. He'd been strong once, invincible, a warrior and pirate who thrived on the thrill of battle and the freedom of the open sea. For years, the name Rohan the Seawolf Dale had been synonymous with fear across the Arithia archipelago. The sight of his ship's black sails had sent shivers down the spines of merchants and rival crews alike. His sword had tasted the blood of many, and his hands had claimed more lives than he cared to remember. Freedom had been the air he breathed. Now, all of that seemed like a dream, a distant memory from another life. The walls of his cell were his new horizon, cold and unyielding. His muscles had withered from disuse, his body a mere shadow of the man he had once been. Even Joe, the pathetic little halfling, had been right. Sooner or later, someone would land the fatal blow. Tomorrow, next week, in a few months, it didn't matter. Time had ceased to hold meaning for Rohan. He could no longer measure it by the rise and fall of the tides or the passing of days at sea. Time had stopped the moment he saw the ocean for the last time. I still remember it clearly, the sun reflecting off the waves, the salty breeze filling his lungs. That was the last true taste of freedom he had, and since then, everything had changed. Chains weren't just physical. They'd shackled his spirit, crushed it slowly under the weight of the pit, the violence that consumed him day after day. He was no longer Rohan the Seawolf. He was Rohan the Slave. A name shouted by the crowd one moment, gotten by the next. It had all unraveled the moment he made the fateful decision to raid that ill-fated ship, the Phantom Tide. His beloved ship, once a symbol of terror across the Arithia archipelago, had pursued countless vessels, but the Black Chains slaver ship had been his undoing. A choice that haunted Rohan with relentless fury. He could still see the blood-soaked deck vividly, his crew falling one by one, their agonized cries swallowed by the cacophony of battle and the sickening crunch of splintered bone. Memory of young Aric's final moments was the most haunting of all. A boy only 19 had been Rohan's first mate, his protege, and the son of the only man Rohan had ever truly respected. Malik, Rohan's mentor and closest friend, had sacrificed his own life to save Rohan's just a few years prior. Now his son had followed him into the void, casualty of reckless ambition and hubris. Seawolf and the Phantom Tide were no more. The crew was decimated, his freedom shattered, and his legacy obliterated, all washed away with the blood of those he had led to their deaths. In the aftermath, all he had left was the bitter, unending taste of regret, constant reminder of his hubris and the price he paid for his greed. Perhaps he deserved death after all. Or perhaps he had died on that blood-soaked deck, his body abandoned on the cruel stage that Black Chains had set that night. Maybe he was now in the underworld, trapped in a nightmarish limbo where the angels of death subjected him to endless trials before allowing his tortured soul to move on. On the other hand, perhaps the unrelenting silence of his cell was starting to unravel his sanity. The oppressive stillness seemed to seep into his very bones, warping his perception until he could no longer distinguish reality from illusion. How else could he explain that unsettling, almost imperceptible creaking cell door, a sound so faint it could easily be mistaken for the whisper of his own imagination? The noise was irregular, a dissonant note in the otherwise stagnant air of his confinement. His mind, frayed and exhausted from the endless hours of solitude and despair, clung desperately to the glimmer of hope that the creak represented. Then there was the light. A sudden, sharp beam of illumination pierced the suffocating darkness, slicing through the narrow crack at the entrance to his cell. The light was harsh and alien, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom that had consumed him for so long. It was as if the darkness had been pierced by a divine ray, a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for redemption. The cell door creaked open wider, revealing the dim, flickering lights of the arena's corridors beyond. Rohan's eyes widened in disbelief, his mind struggling to reconcile the sight with the grim reality he had grown accustomed to. He could hear the distant whispers of the arena crowd, their voices a haunting echo of the chaos he had been a part of for so long. A wave of hesitation washed over him. The arena, with its maddening roars and unrelenting brutality, seemed like a cruel joke now. The thought of risking his life, the only thing he had left in this world that had forsaken him, for a chance at escape, was terrifying. He could almost hear Joe's mocking laughter, feel the weight of his chains, and sense the crushing finality of the cell closing behind him forever. Yet as he stood there, light casting long shadows across the cold stone floor, something shifted within him. The oppressive silence of his cell was once a symbol of defeat, now felt like a cage, a shackle that held him back from a potential chance at freedom, his resolve buried beneath layers of despair and to stir. Rohan took a deep breath, pushing himself off the floor with a groan of pain and exhaustion. His hands, shaking from the weight of his decision, reached toward the door. With each step toward the unknown, whispers of the arena grew louder, mingling with the sound of his own pounding heart. He knew the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but in that moment, the desire for freedom outweighed the fear of the unknown. For better or worse, Rohan took that last step, and he immediately knew. This would be the longest journey of his life. Very nice. I like this. Great imagery. I get, the Colosseum type feel, the chanting, the battle between the two ships. Great imagery. I have one question. Let me reread through this real quick. Okay, so I made a mental assumption, which is probably incorrect, but it's something to think about. You talk about the fact that the iron chains around his wrists and neck felt like boulders weighing him down. And by the end, I'm feeling like somehow he has gotten rid of those shackles. And if that's not the case, that might be a detail you add just before as he realizes he's going to make the escape attempt, that he is shackle free, that he's got these shackles and he's got this thing around his neck, but it's not enough to keep him anymore. Something along those lines. Otherwise, I really like this. I think it's really good. That's the first chapter. I really want to find out more about Rohan and what he does and what his journey is. Oh, excuse me. All right. Very nicely done. All right, I've got another one in here I'm going to read. I don't think Mr. Teacher Writes is here. I don't know that I have any trigger warning for him. More of letting the mental chains behind. So maybe what you do is you make the comparison towards the end is that he may still be wearing these iron chains, but the mental chains, he's breaking the bonds of the mental chains. Make that, so we still know he's going to have to somehow get out with the stuff on him. But he's broken those other chains. I think that might add a little bit to it. Again, that's mine as a reader. Take it for what it's worth, and hopefully it helps. Let's see. Read. So this one is going to be Great Forest. Feels like Forrest Gump. That's fine. Right. Oh, it was absolutely my pleasure. Magic, I don't think there's anything of yours I haven't read and thought, oh man, this is going to be good. Where I want to read more. I want to get more of it. I'd be happy to read it anytime. All right. This one up here. Oh no. The page is gone. Wap, 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 wap. Oh. Make sure I get it right. Copy link. And move on writing. Oh no. Oh well. I'll have to respond. Getting a 404 error. Alrighty. Well, thought I had another one to read. Oops. Chapter 21. Where are we at here? 15 minutes to ads. Can't get through a chapter, but I can partway through it. So, I'll take another couple swigs here. We've got about 40 minutes left in the stream. No happy hour tonight. The offspring number 2 is driving out from Arizona. And she and Mrs. K are going to have a girls' night at the beach. Offspring number 2 works for a hotel chain, and got them a room for tonight, and got another room for me and Mrs. Kahuna to share tomorrow night. So tomorrow night I'll be down at the beach as well. Be right back. Going to drive home from work and then be back if you're still up. All right. Yeah. So offspring number 2 is driving down. She'll probably be here around, my guess is going to be somewhere around 8:30, 9 o'clock, that neighborhood, because she drives way too fast. And Mrs. K will probably be home in about an hour. I don't know if she's going to want to do a happy hour. My guess is probably not. It's been a tough week. Not tough as in she's had a terrible time, but she's had a lot of work to do. So I don't think she's going to be up for a happy hour. But, who knows? I don't think she's going to get here in time before the end of the stream. So. But we'll do a happy hour again soon. So I will be ending the stream at about 4 o'clock. My time, which is 40 minutes from now. So without further ado, I am going to continue with Frankenstein. We're going to do chapter 21. I will take a break in the middle of it or an ad when I see it coming. So back to chapter 21 of Frankenstein. I was soon introduced into the presence of the magistrate, an old benevolent man with calm and mild manners. He looked upon me, however, some degree of severity, and then, turning towards my conductors, he asked who appeared as witnesses on this occasion. About a half-dozen men came forward, and one, being selected by the magistrate, he deposed that he had been out fishing the night before with his son and brother-in-law Daniel Nugent. Then, about 10 o'clock, they observed a strong northerly blast rising, and they accordingly put in for port. It was a very dark night, as the moon had not yet risen. They did not land at the harbour, but, as they had been accustomed, at a creek about 2 miles below. He walked on first, carrying a part of the fishing tackle, and his companions followed him at some distance. As he was proceeding along the sands, he struck his foot against something, and fell at his length on the ground. His companions came up to assist him, and by the light of their lantern, they found that he had fallen on the body of a man who was to all appearance dead. Their first supposition was that it was the corpse of some person who had been drowned and was thrown on the shore by the waves, but on examination they found that the clothes were not wet, and that even that the body was not then cold. They instantly carried it to the cottage of an old woman near the spot and endeavored, but in vain, to restore it to life. It appeared to be a handsome young man, about 25 years of age. He had apparently been strangled, as there was no sign of any violence except the black mark of fingers on his neck. The first part of the disposition did not in the least interest me, but when the mark of the fingers was mentioned, I remembered the murder of my brother, and felt myself extremely agitated. Limbs trembled, and a mist came over my eyes, which obliged me to lean on a chair for support. The magistrate observed me with a keen eye, and of course drew an unfavorable augury from my manner. The son confirmed his father's account, but when Daniel Nugent was called, he swore positively that just before the fall of his companion, he saw a boat with a single man in it a short distance from the shore. As far as he could judge by the light of a few stars, it was the same boat in which I had just landed. The woman deposed that she lived near the beach and was standing at the door of her cottage, waiting for the return of the fishermen, not an hour before she heard the recovery of the body, and she saw a boat with only one man in it push off from that part of the shore where the corpse was found afterwards. Other woman confirms the account of the fishermen having brought the body into her house. It was not cold. They put it into a bed and rubbed it, and Daniel went into town for the apothecary. But life was quite gone. Several other men were examined concerning my landing, and they agreed that with the strong north wind that had arisen during the night, it was very probable that I had beaten about for many hours and had been obliged to return nearly to the same spot from which I had departed. Besides, they observed that it appeared that I had brought the body from another place, and it was likely that I had not appeared to know the shore, might have put into the harbour, ignorant of the distance of the town, from the place where I had deposited the corpse. Mr. Curwen, on hearing this evidence, desired that I should be taken into the room where the body lay for interment, that it might be observed what the effect the sight of it would produce upon me. The idea was probably suggested by the extreme agitation I had exhibited when the mode of the murder had been described. It was accordingly conducted as the magistrate and several other persons to the inn. I could not help being struck by the strange coincidences that had taken place during this eventful night, but knowing that I had been conversing with several persons in the island I had inhabited about the time that the body had been found, it was perfectly tranquil as to the consequences of the affair. I entered the room where the corpse lay and was led up to the coffin. Then I described my sensations on beholding it. I feel yet parched with horror. Nor can I reflect on that terrible moment without shuddering in agony. The examination, the presence of the magistrate and witnesses passed like a dream from my memory when I saw the lifeless form of Henry Clerval stretched before me. I gasped for breath, and throwing myself on the body, I exclaimed, "Have my murderous machinations deprived you also, my dearest Henry, of life? Two I have already destroyed, other victims await their destiny, but you, Clerval, my friend, my benefactor." The human frame could no longer support the agonies I endured, and I was carried out of the room in strong convulsions. A fever succeeded to this. I lay for 2 months on the point of death. My ravings, as I afterwards heard, were frightful. I called myself the murderer of William, of Justine, of Clerval. Sometimes I entreated my attendants to assist me in the destruction of the fiend, by whom I was already tormented, and at others I felt the fingers of the monster already grasping my neck, and screamed aloud with agony and terror. Fortunately, as I spoke my native language, Mr. Kervin alone understood me, but my gestures and bitter cries were sufficient to affright the other witnesses. Why did I not die? More miserable than man ever was before, why did I not sink into forgetfulness and rest? Death snatches away many blooming children, the only hopes of their doting parents. How many brides and youthful lovers have been one day in the bloom of health and hope, and the next a prey for worms and the decay of the tomb? Of what materials was I made, that I could thus resist it by so many shocks, which, like the turning of the wheel, continually renewed the torture? But I was doomed to live, and in 2 months found myself as awaking from a dream, in a prison, stretched on a wretched bed, surrounded by jailers and turnkeys, bolts, and all the miserable apparatus of a dungeon. It was morning, I remember, when I thus awoke to understanding. I had forgotten the particulars of what had happened, and only felt as if some great misfortune had suddenly overwhelmed me. But then I looked around and saw the barred windows and the squalidness of the room in which I was. All flashed across my memory, and I groaned bitterly. This sound disturbed an old woman who was sleeping in a chair beside me. She was a hired nurse, the wife of one of the turnkeys, and her countenance expressed all those bad qualities which often characterize that class. The lines of her face were hard and rude, like that of persons accustomed to see without sympathizing in sights of misery. Her tone expressed her entire indifference. She addressed me in English, and the voice struck me as one that I had heard during my sufferings. "Are you better now, sir?" said she. I replied in the same language with a feeble voice. "I believe I am, but if it be all true, indeed I did not dream. I am sorry that I am still alive to feel this misery and horror." "For that matter," replied the old woman, "if you mean about the gentleman you murdered, I believe that it would be better for you if you were dead, for I fancy it would go hard with you. However, that's none of my business. I am sent to nurse you and get you well. I do my duty with a safe conscience. It were well if everybody did the same." I turned with loathing from the woman who could utter so unfeeling a speech to a person just saved on the very edge of death. I felt languid, unable to reflect on all that had passed. The whole series of my life appeared to me as a dream. I sometimes doubted if indeed it were all true, but it never presented itself to my mind with the force of reality. As the images that floated before me became more distinct, I grew feverish. The darkness pressed around me. No one was near me who soothed me with the gentle voice of love. No dear hand supported me. The physician came and prescribed medicines, and the old woman prepared them for me. But utter carelessness was visible in the first, and the expression of brutality was strongly marked in the visage of the second. Who could be interested in the fate of a murderer, a hangman who would gain his fee? These were my first reflections, but I soon learned that Mr. Kervin had shown me extreme kindness. He had caused the best room in the prison to be prepared for me. Wretched indeed was the best. And it was he who had provided a physician and a nurse. It is true, he seldom came to see me. For although he ardently desired to relieve the sufferings of every human creature, he did not wish to be present at the agonies and miserable ravings of a murderer. He came, therefore, sometimes to see that I was not neglected, but his visits were short and with long intervals. One day, while I was gradually recovering, I was seated in a chair, my eyes half open and my cheeks livid like those in death. I was overcome by gloom and misery and often reflected I had better seek death than desire to remain in a world which was to me replete with wretchedness. At one time I considered whether I should not declare myself guilty and suffer the penalty of the law, less innocent than poor Justine had been. Such were my thoughts when the door of my apartment was opened and Mr. Curwen entered. His countenance expressed sympathy and compassion. He drew a chair close to mine and addressed me in French. I've hears that this place is shocking to you. Can I do anything to make you more comfortable? I thank you, but all that you mention is nothing to me. On the whole earth there is no comfort for which I am capable of receiving. I know that the sympathy of a stranger can be a little relief to one borne down as you are, so strange a misfortune. But you will, I hope, soon quit this melancholy abode, for doubtless evidence can easily be brought to you to free you from the criminal charge. But this is the least of my concern. I am, by a course of strange events, become the most miserable of mortals. Persecuted and tortured as I am, and have been, can death be any evil to me? Well, nothing indeed. Could be more unfortunate and agonizing than the strange chances that have lately occurred. You were thrown by some surprising accident on this shore, renowned for its hospitality, seized immediately and charged with murder. The first sight that was presented to your eyes was the body of your friend, murdered in so unaccountable a manner and placed, as it were, by some fiend across your path. Mr. Curwen said this. Notwithstanding the agitation I endured on the retrospect of my sufferings, I also felt considerable surprise at the knowledge he seemed to possess concerning me. I suppose some astonishment was exhibited in my countenance, for Mr. Curwen hastened to say, immediately upon your being taken ill, all the papers that were on your person were brought me, and I examined them that I might discover some trace by which I could send to your relations an account of your misfortune and illness. I found several letters, and among others, one which I discovered from its commencement to be from your father. I instantly wrote to Geneva. Nearly 2 months have elapsed since the departure of my letter. You are ill. Even now you tremble, and you are unfit for agitation of any kind. This suspense is 1,000 times worse than the most horrible event. Tell me what new scene of death has been acted, and whose murder I am now to lament. The family's perfectly well, said Mr. Curwen with gentleness, and someone, a friend, come to visit you. And we got an ad coming, so I'm going to pause right there. So, he's now lost his brother, someone who was close to the family, a young lady who was close to the family, and now his best friend, all at the hands of the creature. So, he is definitely suffering. We'll run this ad, and then we'll finish up the stream for the day. But yeah, Victor is feeling the consequences of his actions. Although, if you ask me, he's a little bit of a whiner. You know, kind of a whiner. Oh, woe is me. Like, suck it up, Buttercup. You FO'd, now you FA'd, now you're FOing. And there's the ad. So, for those of you who don't get ads, I'm still here. Monday stream will very likely be a civilization stream. As I'm looking for I'm looking to play Civilization. I have played, I think, every Civilization 7. Every Civilization game since pretty much the beginning. Let's see. Huh. Okay. Don't tell Mrs. K. I'm buying it. I told her I was going to buy it. I'm in the process of buying it while we're on this commercial. And when we come back from the commercial, we will continue. Off it goes. Hey, I saved 33%. Cool by me. Games have just gotten so ridiculously expensive. All right. I'm going to get an email. All right, well, I did that. Ad should be almost over. 42 seconds, and then we'll be back from the ad. But yeah, Monday will be Civilization 7, and I'll be learning it. So we will fire it up. I'll probably fire it up over the weekend just to make sure everything's working right. Make sure I've optimized everything, but we'll start a brand new save on it on Monday afternoon. All right, 15 seconds left. We'll be back from the ad. I forgot to change that. Well, good. Good gushum. Big googly moogly. All right, ad break is finishing. And we are back. All right, we'll continue with chapter 1. I know not by what chain of thoughts the idea presented itself, but instantly darted into my mind that the murderer had come to mock at my misery and taunt me with the death of Clerval as a new incitement for me to comply with his hellish desires. I put my hand before my eyes and cried out in agony, "Oh, take him away! I cannot see him, for God's sake, do not let him enter!" Mr. Curwen regarded me with a troubled countenance. He could not help regarding my exclamation as a presumption of my guilt, and said in rather a severe tone, "I should have thought, young man, that the presence of your father would have been welcome instead of inspiring such violent repugnance." "My father!" cried I, while every feature and every muscle was relaxed from anguish to pleasure. "Is my father indeed come? How kind, how very kind, but where is he? Why does he not hasten to me?" My change of manner surprised and pleased the magistrate. Perhaps he thought that my former exclamation was a momentary return of delirium, and now he instantly resumed his former benevolence. He rose and quitted the room with my nurse, and in a moment my father entered it. Nothing at this moment could have given me greater pleasure than the arrival of my father. I stretched out my hand to him and cried, "Are you then safe? And Elizabeth, and Ernest?" My father called me with assurances of their welfare and endeavored, by dwelling on these subjects so interesting to my heart, to raise my desponding spirits. But soon he felt that the prison cannot be the abode of cheerfulness. "What a place this is that you inhabit, my son," said he, looking mournfully at the barred windows and wretched appearance of the room. "You travel to seek happiness. The fatality seems to pursue you. Poor Clerval." The name of my unfortunate and murdered friend was an agitation too great to be endured in my weak state. I shed tears. "Alas, yes, my father," replied I. "Some destiny of the most horrible kind hangs over me. I must live to fulfill it, or surely I should have died on the coffin of Henry." We were not allowed to converse for any length of time, for the precarious state of my health rendered every precaution necessary that could ensure tranquility. Mr. Curvin came in and insisted that my strength would not be exhausted by too much exertion. The appearance of my father was to me like that of my good angel, and I gradually recovered As my sickness quitted me, I was absorbed by a gloomy and black melancholy that nothing could dissipate. The image of Clerval was forever before me, ghastly and murdered. More than once the agitation into which these reflections threw me made my friends dread a dangerous relapse. Alas! Why did they preserve so miserable and detested a life? It was surely that I might fulfill my destiny, which is now drawing to a close. Soon, oh very soon, will death extinguish these throbbings and relieve me from the mighty weight of anguish that bears me to the dust. And in executing the avowal of justice, I shall also sink to rest. Then, the appearance of death was distant, although the wish was ever present to my thoughts. And I often sat for hours motionless and speechless, wishing for some mighty revolution that might bury me, my destroyer, in its ruins. The season of the assizes approached. I had already been 3 months in prison, and although I was still weak and continual danger of relapse, I was obliged to travel nearly 100 miles to the country town where the court was held. Mr. Curvin charged himself with every care of collecting witnesses and arranging my defense. I was spared the grace of appearing publicly as a criminal, as the case was not brought before the court that decides on life and death. The grand jury rejected the bill, on its being proved that I was on the Orkney Islands at the hour the body of my friend was found, and a fortnight after my removal was liberated from prison. My father was enraptured on finding me freed from the vexations of a criminal charge, that I was again allowed to breathe a fresh atmosphere and permitted to return to my native country. I did not participate in these feelings, for to me the walls of a dungeon or a palace were alike hateful. The cup of life was poisoned forever, and also the sun shone upon me. As upon the happy and gay of heart, I saw around me nothing but a dense and frightful darkness, penetrated by no light, but the glimmer of 2 eyes that glared upon me. Sometimes they were the expressive eyes of Henry, languishing in death, the dark orbs nearly covered by the lids, and the long black lashes that fringed them. Sometimes it was the watery, clouded eyes of the monster, as I first saw them in my chamber at Ingolstadt. My father tried to awaken in me the feelings of affection. He talked of Geneva, which I should soon visit, of Elizabeth and Ernest. These words only drew deep groans from me. Sometimes, indeed, I felt a wish for happiness, and thought with melancholy delight of my beloved cousin, or longed with a devouring malady to see once more the blue lake and rapid Rhone that had been so dear to me in my early childhood. My general state of feeling was a torpor, in which a prison was as welcome a residence as the divinest scene in nature. And these fits were seldom interrupted by paroxysms of anguish and despair. At these moments I often endeavored to put an end to the existence I loathed, and it required unceasing attendance and vigilance to restrain me from committing some dreadful act of violence. Yet one duty remained to me, a recollection of which finally triumphed over my selfish despair. It was necessary that I should return without delay to Geneva, there to watch over the lives of those I so fondly loved, and to lie in wait for the murderer, that if any chance led me to the place of his concealment, or if he dared again to blast me by his presence, I might, with unfailing aim, put an end to the existence of this monstrous image, which I had endued with the mockery of a soul still more monstrous. My father still desired to delay our departure, fearful that I could not sustain the fatigues of a journey, for I was a shattered wreck, a shadow of a human being. My strength was gone. I was a mere skeleton, and even night and day preyed upon my wasted frame. Still, as I urged our leaving Ireland with such inquietude and impatience, my father thought it best to yield. We took our passage on board a vessel bound for Havre de Grace, and sailed with a fair wind from the Irish shores. It was midnight. I lay on the deck looking at the stars and listening to the dashing of the waves. I hailed the darkness that shut Ireland from my sight. and my pulse beat with a feverish joy when I reflected that I should soon see Geneva. The past appeared to me in the light of a frightful dream, yet the vessel in which I was, the wind that blew me from the detested shore of Ireland, and the sea which surrounded me, pulled me too forcibly so that I was deceived by no vision. And the Clerval, my friend and dearest companion, had fallen a victim to me and the monster of my creation. I repassed in my memory my whole life. Quiet happiness while residing with my family in Geneva. The death of my mother and my departure for Ingolstadt. I remembered shuddering the mad enthusiasm that hurled me onto the creation of my hideous enemy. And I called to mind the night in which he first lived. I was unable to pursue the train of thought. 1,000 feelings pressed upon me, and I wept bitterly. Ever since my recovery from the fever, I had been in the custom of taking every night a small quantity of laudanum, for it was by means of this drug only that I was enabled to gain the rest necessary for the preservation of life. Oppressed by the recollection of my various misfortunes, I now swallowed double my usual quantity and soon slept profoundly. But sleep did not afford me respite from thought and misery. My dreams presented 1,000 objects that scared me. Towards morning, I was possessed by a kind of nightmare. I felt the fiend's grasp in my neck and could not free myself from it. Groans and cries rang in my ears. My father, who was watching over me, perceiving my restlessness, awoke me. Dashing waves were around, the cloudy sky above. The fiend was not here. A sense of security, a feeling that a truce was established between the present hour and the irresistible, disastrous future, imparted to me a kind of calm forgetfulness, of which the human mind is by its structure peculiarly susceptible. That's chapter 21. Welcome, Altoracine. Things have been good. I had to take a month off for shoulder surgery. Took a lot of my energy out. I'm just starting to get some mobility back. Typing was very difficult for about 2 weeks because I was in a sling, and so my arm was pinned up here, and so if I wanted to type with both hands, I had to way over. No bueno. Not good for responding to things. And again, it took a lot of energy. It's still taking some energy, but not as bad. I'm doing exercises to restore range of motion. But yeah. Otherwise, it's been going good. Mrs. K is doing well as well. When I had surgery on my upper arm. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's not much you can do. I mean, it is what it is. Mine was a rotator cuff surgery. So technically what they did was they did a bicep tenodesis of the long head of the bicep and a repair and reattachment of the supraspinatus muscle. So, yeah. They worked along here. I now have 2 metal anchors in the top of my humerus, the upper arm bone. I have 2 metal anchors there, and out of those come sutures that pull everything up. Big science word is sciencey and big. Yes. I tend to learn how to speak their language so that they can't go over my head with stuff. It also means that they give me more information because the doctors tend to feel like, oh, okay, he's actually paying attention to what's happening. I'm not just fixing this and letting it, saying goodbye to him. He's actually going to ask me questions. So, yeah, I try to learn. I did the same thing with my heart condition. Before, when they put in stents and then before my surgery, my heart surgery, I learned. And I had learned a lot about heart problems anyway because my dad had a quadruple bypass and, had heart problems for years. So I learned a lot from him and then transferred a lot of that to my own experiences and was able to, when a doctor said, doctors, especially the higher level doctors, they tend to just use big words because they can, forgetting who they're talking to. I think it surprises them when my eyes don't glaze over because I'll ask the questions. Oh, okay. We have a rule here. If I've got a weird pain scale. My heart attack was about a 7 on a scale of 1 to 10 to me. My doctor looked at me and said, yeah, that was a 10. That was a 10. You nearly died. That was a 10. Okay, so we've adjusted my scale. So basically, anytime, if I ever have a heart pain that I judge to be level 3 or higher, it's a trip to the emergency room. Hasn't happened now in almost 2 years, which is awesome. Means we've got all the meds dialed in. But when I do go in, okay, so we're going to take a little blood. Okay, so you're going to be looking for the you're going to be looking for the levels of I can't think of the word. Of course not. It's an enzyme that's in your blood when you have a heart attack. It's released because of the inflammation. You already had a heart scare, not wanting any more. Yeah, leave that to me. Yeah, no. Look, this is not a competition. We're not wagering here. Troponin levels. That's the word. I always ask them. We're going to looking at troponin levels, right? Yeah, that's right. Cool. All right. Well, let me know what we get. And from then on, they're like, okay, so we checked the troponins. Well, now that we're talking on that same page, the information comes a lot more quickly. I'm not just asking for any information. I'm asking for the information that's relevant at the time. Great. How does the EKG look? Do we have a good baseline? Have you seen my baseline? Have you measured it against the baseline? All that kind of stuff. So, it helps to learn their language. All right, we got a few minutes left in the stream. I'm not going to continue with Frankenstein because I don't want to start another chapter, with 8 minutes left. So, Althoricine, how's things been in your neck of the woods? I hope things have been going well. And what did you have surgery on your upper arm for, if you don't mind me asking? Since we're in the medical section of the medical portion of the stream. I mentioned that I really like those circle things. The jugs and the flavor things. I have 6 more to go before my next order gets here. I'm actually behind on drinking them. But yeah, how are things going in your neck of the woods, Altoricine? Hot. Having a mini heat wave. Going out to the gym for a little healthy living, been editing, redrafting your book. What part of the world are you in that it's hot? I don't remember. Yeah, it has been actually nice here. Let me look. We're actually going down to stay the night at Mrs. K is staying the night with offspring number 2 at the beach. Tonight, I'll be down there for the second night tomorrow. Yeah, today was 73. So, and we're in a pretty arid desert area, but we have had a very cool start to this year. Yeah, I mean, we will start getting up. We'll get 80 degrees on Wednesday. Going all the way up to almost 90 next weekend. So it's starting to warm up, but it's not ridiculous yet. Although Mrs. K says anything above 75 is ridiculous. Keep in mind, she lived in Arizona for 20 years. She's gotten very used to living out here in the Golden State. My arm, I kind of blacked out. Fell into a brick wall and PVC door. Ooh! Bakes went into a wall. Arm went into a slippy plastic door and twisted. Ouch! Took my right humerus, twisted both ends of different. Yahoo! 73 is the high today. Yeah, we're already past the high. fact, it looks like it's already down to 72. We hit the high of 73 today. So, yeah, it was a nice cool day. Ouch, that hurts. I'm guessing at a minimum screws into the arm to hold that whole thing together. Yeah, I got the anchors they put in for me. They look like hollow screws. And so they literally screw it down into the bone. And there are sutures that are attached on the inside of them, technically on the far side. So the sutures basically are held into the bone by this metal screw. And then they tie the muscles together. Which they need to do because they needed to shorten some things. One of those rods, you totally didn't take a picture of? Sure you didn't. I take pictures of my x-rays. I always ask them, is there any way you can shoot video during the surgery so I can see it? When they did my shoulder, I asked. And he said, to be honest with you, just go on YouTube. It looks identical. It's the same thing. You can find a million of them on YouTube, and they all look about the same. Like, okay, well, I get that. And then I gotta say that the description they gave us, the surgery center gave us the blow by blow of what was done. Amazing. You made it back, Lucy, just in time. I'm here for about 4 minutes. I also have to figure out who I'm going to raid. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Wrong button. That sounded a lot like Hot Pockets. See who we got up. If anybody's got suggestions for yes, it does still count. Always counts. Anybody got suggestions for UK? It was around 24.75. Yeah. Yes, but don't they also warm up more slowly? Because you should have thermal mass in the bricks. You should have some thermal mass in the bricks so that it takes longer to warm up. But yeah, it'll retain the heat all the way into the evening. And you guys, from what I understand, most homes in the UK do not have central air. If you have an air conditioner, it's a window air conditioner if you have it. We have central air, and it's set to 72 degrees when we go to bed. AC is not a thing. Yeah. We have desk fans. So you do not have window AC. I find that remarkable. Because every home I've been in that didn't have central AC, we could get window AC, and they're cheap here. I mean, for $100, you put it up in your window, and it cools a room. It doesn't cool everything, but especially the bedroom. Set it up there, turn it on. You can make it an ice box before you go to bed. Probably the way to get them, but as a standard, no. Wow. Yeah, well, window AC is not a standard here. You have to go to your local big box store and buy it. But yeah, they work. And frankly, the last house we rented, we had central AC, but because of the way the house was built, my office was on the west side, and so it got direct morning heat, or direct sunlight from noon on. So we actually put a window air conditioner in that room alone, so I didn't have to run the whole house AC just to keep that room comfortable. So, all right, my friends, it's time for a raid. I'll give you guys a minute here to suggest anybody to raid. Otherwise, I will pick one from my raid channel list, and we'll go hang out with them for a little bit. But I want to thank you all for coming in. Oh, thank you, Altorsi, for coming in. I mean, Losi, thank you. Thank you also earlier for the Who was it? I can't remember who raided now. I'm going to roll back here a little bit. Ruined Rider. Thank you, Ruined Rider, for the raid. Reless Rogue, thank you for the follow. And there was another follow, I thought. Let me look. There's the raid. Oh, someone very early. Who was it? Who was it? Oh, dang it. I apologize. I don't remember who the other... Oh, and Ruined Rider followed. So, thank you all for the follows. Thank you for the raid. Thank you, everyone who was here in the chat. Bree, I know you were there somewhere. Thank you. All right. I'm going to send you off. Looks like... Somebody is doing Disaster Piece Theater, the Ghostlands of Natalie Glasgow. Get some sleep. Yeah, you're up there. Next stream will be Monday. Looks like it's going to be Civ 7. 2 o'clock my time, so GMT, it's 9 p.m. But I hope you guys have a great weekend. And I will see you on Monday. Have a great one, you guys. Stay out of trouble or, don't get caught. Okay.